There is a moment when everyone is alone with their conscience. It is when the door closes, when the last glance is averted, when there are no more cameras, witnesses, or judgments hanging over your head. At that precise moment, something strange happens. The mask slips a little, the shoulders relax, and a question whispers in the ear like an inconvenient confession. Who would I be if no one knew? It could be in front of the computer at 3 in the morning when the blue screen illuminates a face that no one will see. It could be inside a car stopped at a traffic light where words come out softly but with a surprising venom. It could be in that text conversation where you can lie without seeing the eyes of the person on the other side. What matters is not the place, but the silent revelation that emerges when all performances cease. There, in the void between who we appear to be and who we really are, lies a truth that no one likes to face. Most people's morals are not convictions. They are just fear of the audience. And maybe that's why the world seems so broken. We look around and see good people doing terrible things, upstanding people lying blatantly, exemplary citizens who are monsters when they think no one is watching, the father who demands respect at home but humiliates employees at work, the woman who posts quotes about empathy and mistreats those who can't fight back, the man who calls himself a Christian and evades taxes as if it were his divine right. Hypocrisy is not an accidental flaw of human nature. It is its most revealing characteristic, because there's a brutal difference between being good and appearing good, between having character and putting on a show of character, between acting right out of conviction and acting right because someone is watching. And that difference defines not only who we are as individuals, but the kind of society we build when we think no one is paying attention. 24 centuries ago, a Greek philosopher named Plato told a story that exposes this wound with painful surgical precision. It is the story of a magic ring that made its wearer invisible, and what happened when an ordinary man discovered he could do anything without being held accountable. What this story reveals about human nature is so disturbing that it still unsettles those who hear it for the first time. Because if someone's goodness depends solely on being observed, then there is no such thing as goodness. There is only performance. And performance, no matter how good, always ends when the curtains close. Get ready to discover why the most honest question anyone can ask is not, am I a good person? But would I be a good person if I could be something else without consequences? The answer may be more uncomfortable than we care to admit. The story begins with a shepherd named Gyges, working in the barren lands of ancient Lydia. A simple man with calloused hands and a predictable life. He woke up before sunrise, herded his flock through the fields and went to bed early, until the day an earthquake tore the earth apart and revealed something that shouldn't have existed. A gigantic bronze horse emerging from the depths, as if death itself had lost one of its secrets. Inside the horse was a corpse of colossal proportions. On the dead man's finger was a gold ring that looked ordinary, harmless. Gyges picked it up on impulse, who wouldn't, and discovered by chance during a meeting with other shepherds that turning the ring in a certain direction made him completely invisible. Not just hidden, truly invisible, as if he had ceased to exist for the living world. And then Gyges' life changed forever. Not because he gained a superpower, but because he discovered who he really was when no one could see him. First, he visited the royal palace as a curious ghost, just watching. Then he began to watch the queen without being noticed, reveling in the voyeurism of power. Next, he seduced her, using his invisibility as an advantage over all other men. Finally, with her help, he murdered the king and took the throne of Lydia. From honest shepherd to bloodthirsty tyrant in steps that seem natural, inevitable, almost logical. The question Plato asks is simple and devastating. Did Gyges become evil because he gained the ring, or did the ring merely reveal who he always was? Was it invisibility that corrupted him, or did it simply remove the obstacles that prevented his true nature from emerging? This question echoes through the centuries because we all carry some kind of Gyges ring. It is not a magical object, but situations where we can act without visible consequences. The voting booth where no one sees your vote. The anonymous comment on the internet where we can pour out all our pent-up venom. The conversation where we can lie without being discovered. The moment when we find someone's cell phone lost on the street and no one knows it was us who found it. Modernity has multiplied these rings exponentially. Social networks with fake profiles where we create idealized or dark versions of ourselves. Digital transactions that seem to have no human face on the other side. Home offices where the supervisor will never know if we are really working or watching Netflix. Apps that promise no strings attached connections where we can be anyone, try out any personality. Technology has given us more ways to be invisible, irresponsible, and unpunished than Gyges ever dreamed of. And what we do when we think no one is watching reveals more about our character than decades of good public behavior. Watch people in traffic when they think they are alone in their cars, protected by glass and metal. See how they treat delivery drivers, cleaners, telemarketers, people who don't matter socially and can't fight back. Notice what they post when they drink, what they do when they travel to places where no one knows them, what they say about others when those others aren't around to defend themselves. There is something deeply revealing about the way someone acts when they believe their actions have no witnesses who matter. The executive who berates the intern in private but smiles cordially in meetings. The mother who yells at her children at home but pretends to be patient and understanding in front of the other mothers at school. The husband who treats his wife like a maid but plays the loving spouse in public. The doctor who charges more to those with health insurance but less to those who pay cash, evading taxes. The teacher who gives better grades to students he likes personally. The judge who expedites cases involving acquaintances. Small everyday acts of corruption that reveal that the ring of Gyges is always with us. The ring of Gyges is not fantasy. It is everyday reality. The only difference is that instead of becoming literally invisible, we become socially irrelevant or protected by hierarchies. And when we think we are irrelevant, that our actions have no real weight or consequences, something inside us relaxes and shows its true face. Perhaps that is why the corporate world is full of ethical people who lie on reports. That is why upstanding politicians make dirty deals behind closed doors. That is why we know so many good citizens who are domestic tyrants. The ring is always there whispering. No one will know, no one will care, no one can stop you. And when that voice whispers, how many can truly resist? How many choose the hard path when the easy one is available? How many maintain their integrity when it comes at a high cost and no one will applaud their decision? But there is an even more disturbing part to this story. Gyges was not a born psychopath. He was an ordinary man who suddenly had absolute power over his circumstances. And absolute power, as Lord Acton said centuries later, corrupts absolutely. Not because power is inherently evil, but because it removes the external restraints that force us to confront and control the savage part of our nature. The frightening truth is that most of us have never been truly tested. We live in societies with laws, surveillance, reputations at stake, and well-defined social consequences. Our morality has not been put to the real test of the ring. And when small opportunities arise, when we think we can get away with it, how many truly resist? The Ring of Gyges is not just an allegory about power. It is a mirror that reflects our deepest nature when all masks fall away. And perhaps most disturbing is the realization that most of the time we don't even need a magic ring to behave like Gyges. All we need is to think that no one important is paying attention. At some point in life, everyone has pretended to be better than they really are. It may have been during a job interview, lying about working well in a team while thinking about how much you hate meetings. Maybe it was during a first conversation with someone special, inventing noble hobbies you've never practiced. Or maybe it was just smiling politely at your annoying neighbor while planning how to avoid them for the next 6 months. The difference between who we are in public and who we are in private isn't just common hypocrisy. It's something deeper and more frightening. It's proof that we've developed two distinct personalities, and one of them exists solely for external consumption. Glaucon, Plato's brother, understood this with painful clarity. He wasn't interested in defending injustice when he told the story of Gyges' ring. He was doing something more cruel, testing whether justice has any value when no one is watching. And to do so, he proposed a thought experiment that cuts deeper than any philosophical blade. Imagine two men. The first is perfectly just on the inside, but treated by the world as if he were a criminal. Despised, slandered, impoverished, tortured, flogged, chained, burned. His eyes will be gouged out, and after suffering every possible evil, he will be crucified. The second is rotten inside, but manages to maintain an impeccable facade of virtue. Respected, praised, prosperous, admired. He rules cities, accumulates wealth, marries whomever he wants. Which of the two would be happier? Which of the two would you choose to be? The question is so uncomfortable because we know the answer. The vast majority would choose to be the second. They would rather be bad on the inside and admired on the outside than be good on the inside and despised by everyone. And that reveals something devastating about human nature, that our morality is in fact a social strategy, an investment in reputation. Think about the people you know who do volunteer work. How many make a point of taking pictures, posting, tagging charities on social media? How many talk about it in casual conversation as if it were no big deal? How many mention it on resumes, in interviews, on dating profiles? Compare that to how many do quiet volunteer work without anyone knowing, without anyone applauding, without anyone even knowing they exist. The difference between these numbers is the difference between kindness and the performance of kindness. Or look at politicians during election season. Suddenly, they all become defenders of the poor, of the family, of honesty. They visit orphanages with cameras, hug elderly people in nursing homes, take selfies with children in public schools. They cry in interviews talking about their humble origins, how they understand the pain of the people. But when the elections are over, when the cameras are turned off, when the votes are counted, where are they? What do they do when no one is keeping score? When no one is filming? Modern society has turned virtue into a marketing product. Kindness has become content for social media. Integrity has become a corporate slogan. Empathy has become a hashtag. Social justice has become an Instagram bio. And in the midst of this collective charade, we have lost the ability to distinguish between being good and looking good. That's why people who post inspirational quotes about loving your neighbor are the same ones who curse at the delivery guy because the food arrived cold. That's why executives who lecture on corporate ethics are the same ones who evade taxes without batting an eye. That's why influencers who talk about authenticity are the most fake of all. That's why religious leaders who preach humility live in mansions. If you stop to think of someone specific right now, someone who fits this description perfectly, then you get the point. But if you stop to think about yourself, then you really understand the point. Because the hardest thing to accept is not that others are hypocrites. It's that we are too. That our indignation at the falsehood of others may be just another form of moral performance. That our anger at those who are fake may just be anger at recognizing our own falsehood reflected back at us like a relentless mirror. Glauco knew he was touching a sore spot when he said that no one is fair by choice but only by necessity. That if we remove the possibility of punishment, remove the fear of consequences, remove the audience that judges, we will see who we really are beneath all this staged civility. And perhaps the most disturbing thing is to realize that he may be right, that our morality is not a deep conviction but a sophisticated social calculation, that we do good not because it is right, but because it is seen, that we avoid evil not because it is wrong, but because it is risky, that we are good only when it pays to be good. True justice, the kind that endures even when no one is watching, even when it is punished for existing, may be the rarest thing in the world, rarer than diamonds, rarer than geniuses, rarer than saints, because it requires something that few possess, the courage to be good without an audience, to do the right thing without applause, to maintain integrity when it costs everything and offers nothing in return. And who has that courage? Who chooses the truth when lies are more convenient? Who keeps their word when breaking it would be more profitable? Who stands on the right side when the right side is losing? There is a silent war going on inside every person at this very moment. It is not a metaphor, it is not psychological drama. It is the anatomy of the human condition. Three distinct forces vie for control of the soul, like rival generals in a battle that never ends. Socrates saw this with haunting clarity. For him, the human soul had three distinct parts: reason, which seeks truth and wisdom; the combative part, which fights for honor and courage; and the appetites, which desire pleasure and immediate satisfaction. Justice occurs when these three parts work in harmony, with reason governing, the spirit obeying, and desires being controlled. Injustice is when this order is reversed, when appetites take power and begin to rule everything. Imagine a kingdom where the cook has become king, where the court jester commands the army, where the wise man has been locked in the tower. It sounds absurd, but this is exactly how the soul of the unjust lives. The lowest impulses give the orders, reason is ignored, and the result is a life that may seem successful on the outside but is permanent internal chaos. Think of the workaholic who never stops, never rests, never questions why they are running. Their appetitive part, not for food or sex but for status and validation, has completely hijacked their ability to reflect. They don't work because they consciously chose to. They work because they can't stop. They are a slave to their own impulses, even if those impulses seem noble. Or consider the person addicted to social media, compulsively checking how many likes they got, how many followers they gained, how they compare to others. They refresh their feed every 5 minutes, feel anxious when their phone battery dies, panic when the internet goes down. It's not a rational choice, it's an uncontrolled appetite for approval that drives their entire emotional life. Reason has been dethroned by the impulse to be seen, admired, envied. The unbalanced soul lives in a state of constant unrest. Like a drug addict who is never completely satisfied, it always needs more. More money, more power, more recognition, more pleasure. And the more it has, the more it wants, because the thirst is not being quenched, only fed. This explains why so many people who have made it in life are miserable. Why rich and famous celebrities suffer from depression. Why powerful executives have panic attacks. Why influencers with millions of followers feel empty. Why billionaires continue to work obsessively to earn more billions than they will ever be able to spend. They have achieved everything their appetites desired, but their souls remain in turmoil. The unjust man may be outwardly successful, but he lives in torment within. He must constantly lie, to others and to himself. He must hide who he really is. He must maintain multiple versions of his personality and remember which one to use in each situation. He is an actor playing a role 24 hours a day, and actors, no matter how talented, get tired of pretending. He lives in constant fear of being discovered. When the phone rings unexpectedly, his heart races. When someone asks a direct question, he has to quickly calculate which version of the truth to tell. When he is alone, his thoughts turn against him like vultures. Insomnia is a frequent companion, because it's hard to relax when you're always on guard. The righteous man, on the other hand, lives in quiet harmony. He may not have fancy cars or impressive bank accounts, but he has something rarer: inner peace. His reason rules, his impulses obey, and he doesn't have to hide anything from anyone because he has nothing to hide from himself. He sleeps well because his conscience is clear. He answers the phone without fear because he owes nothing to anyone. It's like the difference between a well-tuned orchestra and an out-of-tune orchestra. The out-of-tune orchestra may play louder, may have more expensive instruments, may be on a more luxurious stage. But who would prefer to listen to it? Who could stand the dissonance for long? The righteous soul resonates in harmony with itself. It doesn't need alcohol to relax, it doesn't need sleeping pills, it doesn't need therapy to cope. Not because it's perfect, but because it's aligned. Its parts work together instead of fighting each other. But achieving this harmony is harder than it seems. It means saying no to impulses when they knock loudly at the door. It means choosing the difficult path when the easy one is right there in front of you, beckoning. It means governing yourself when it would be much simpler to let yourself be carried away by the current of your desires. Most people don't even try. They prefer to live in inner anarchy, letting whatever impulse screams the loudest take control. And then they wonder why they feel so tired, so anxious, so lost. Why does life seem like a constant struggle against themselves? Why, even when they get what they want, does the satisfaction last so little? The answer lies in the civil war they have declared against their own souls. When there is no internal government, there is only the tyranny of desires. And tyranny, even if self-imposed, always ends in suffering. There is a specific loneliness that only the upright know. It is the loneliness of those who have chosen to remain true to themselves when everyone around them has chosen convenience. It is the loneliness of those who speak the truth in a room full of liars. It is the loneliness of those who refuse to wear the ring when everyone else has already put it on. Socrates knew this. When he drank the hemlock at the age of 70, condemned for corrupting the youth and not recognizing the gods of the city, he had a simple choice: renounce his ideas and live, or maintain his integrity and die. He chose to die, not because he was suicidal, but because he understood something that few understand. There are fates worse than death, and one of them is to live as a coward. True justice is not a prize that is won for good behavior. It is an internal condition that is cultivated regardless of external circumstances. The just man that Plato describes can be flogged, tortured, despised by the whole world, and still remain at peace with himself. Not because he is a masochist, but because his happiness does not depend on the approval of others. Imagine waking up every day knowing exactly who you are, not having to check the mood of others to decide how to behave, not having to lie to fit in, not having to hide parts of yourself for fear of judgment, not having to carry the weight of hypocrisy on your back like a backpack full of rocks. This is the freedom of the righteous man. He may be hated, but he does not hate himself. He may be rejected, but he does not reject himself. He may lose everything except his dignity, because that is the only thing that no one can take away from someone who does not voluntarily give it up. But this freedom comes at a price. And the price is the loneliness of being authentic in a world of masks. How many times, in a group conversation, have you wanted to say what you really thought but kept quiet because you knew you would be misunderstood? How many times have you agreed with something you thought was wrong just to avoid conflict? How many times have you laughed at a joke you didn't find funny just to avoid looking uptight? Every time this happens, you turn the ring of Geigs upside down. Instead of becoming invisible to do evil, you make your truth invisible to avoid discomfort. The difference is that the righteous man prefers the discomfort of rejection to the discomfort of betraying himself. He prefers to be misunderstood rather than misunderstand himself. He prefers to be alone than to be accompanied by a false version of himself. And here is the most beautiful paradox of Platonic philosophy. The man who chooses the solitude of authenticity finds a companion that no one can take away, the company of himself. He becomes interesting to himself. His thoughts do not bore him. His silences do not distress him. His own presence does not irritate him. The unjust, on the other hand, even when surrounded by people, experience an even deeper loneliness. It is the loneliness of those who cannot bear their own company. That is why they need constant distractions, constant noise, external validation. That is why they are afraid of silence, of reflection, of moments alone. because when they are alone with themselves, they are alone with someone they do not like. The tyrant Plato describes at the end of the Republic is the most powerful and at the same time the most miserable man in the world. He rules entire cities but cannot rule himself. He is feared by crowds but lives in fear of his own desires. He has everything he wants but cannot want what he has. He is the perfect portrait of the successful modern man, the CEO of a multinational corporation who secretly takes antidepressants, the influencer with millions of followers who cries alone in the bathroom, the powerful politician who drinks until he passes out to forget who he has become. The fragmented soul can conquer the whole world and still feel empty, because it has conquered everything except itself. Plato isn't selling a philosophy. He's offering a diagnosis. He's saying, look inside. What do you see there? Is that someone you'd like to spend eternity with? Because that's what you're going to do. You're going to spend eternity with yourself. When all the masks come off, when all the performances are over, when there is no one left to impress or disappoint, there is only one question left. Who am I when no one is looking? And if the answer is someone you're ashamed of, then all the success in the world won't be enough to fill the void. But if the answer is someone you respect, someone you admire, someone you love, then all the rejection in the world won't be able to break you. In the end, you will be left alone with who you really are. The question is not whether others will discover who you are. The question is whether you can live with yourself knowing who you are. What about you? Can you look in the mirror and like what you see? Write in the comments. What would be your first move if you had the Ring of Gyges? If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos. You reflect on each idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to go with this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the codes of the White Rabbit are ready for you. The link is in the pinned comment. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.